Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies, and this video is The Secret Teachings of Jesus by Dr. M. Doreal. The Secret Teachings of Jesus by Dr. M. Doreal. Those who have delved deeply into biblical lore know that the sayings which we have in our Christian Bible in English translations comprise only a very small part of the true teachings of Jesus. We know also that Jesus taught two separate and distinct teachings. That is, he taught one teaching to the great mass of people and another teaching to those who were able to understand. We have evidence of this in the Gospel of Matthew, where the disciples, questioning Jesus because he taught the people in one manner and themselves in another, received this answer: "Unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but unto them it is not given, because seeing they see not, and hearing they hear not, and will not understand. For their eyes are blind and their ears closed, and they will not understand." This is sufficient evidence alone to prove to us that there must be some hidden teaching above or beyond that which was given to the great mass of people. If we realize that the things which we have been taught and have been living by are those things which were given to the people who had neither eyes to see nor ears to hear, and could not understand, we begin to wonder why it is that we are expected to advance, develop, and find God unless we have some means of gaining access to those teachings. Of the life of Jesus, very little is shown in the Bible. For instance, we have altogether about 3 years of his life that is touched upon in the Bible. We have his birth, the age of 12, then he disappeared into the age of 29 or 30. When we have about 3 years of his teachings resolved down to its final analysis, we are told only of about 42 days in the life of Jesus. In the East, Jesus was known under another name than Jesus. In the East, we find that a great deal more is known about the life of Jesus than it is in the Western world. For instance, about the ages between 12 and 28. I want to say briefly that after he was 12 years of age, he went to Egypt for a time, and then after that he spent 5 years in a Tibetan monastery, and then 5 more years teaching and healing in India before he returned to Palestine. In India, he is still known under the name of Vakata. I myself spent over 8 years in India and Tibet. I spent 2 years in a monastery in which Jesus spent 5 years of the unknown period in his life, and while there, discussing with one of the lamas the Christian teachings, he said, "We know more about the teachings of Jesus than do you in the Western world because he spent 5 years here." And he asked me if I wanted to see the manuscripts of Jesus. When I examined them, I found that they were composed of rolls of parchment with the letters written on them with a black material that looked like paint. It stood out like it had been applied with a brush, and the letters were Aramaic characters. Aramaic was the language which was common in Palestine at the time of Jesus. Hebrew was a dead language even at the time. It was only the high priest that read from the ancient Hebrew, and the lesser priest would read from the Targums, which were in Aramaic. The main object of this article is to give you some selected verses from the works that I read in the Tibetan monastery and explain them to you. The Orthodox Christian interpretations of the teachings of Jesus are very much misinterpreted. In the first place, the Christians say that he died for them, while he said, "There is no death." What he said was, "I go to show you the way into eternal life." So they say that he died for them. On that basis, the very foundation principle of our Orthodox Christianity is erroneous. Jesus was an avatar, a son of God. He came to show men a path so that they could come again, return into the light that had been lost. The trouble was he did not find many that were able to receive the light. In these passages that I'm going to give you, you will find a few fragments of these scrolls that I read that are in the Bible. They were in the form of notes. They were thoughts or sayings that Jesus put down as they occurred to him. So these things that I will give are fragments, and I am going to try to connect them as much as possible. I have complete transcripts of the 32 scrolls of sayings and 2 which deal with other things entirely. Someday I hope to be able to publish them. I am working under instruction all the time, not from some unseen guide or spirit, but by the direction of the great teachers of the White Lodge. The first of these sayings that I want to give to you is a very peculiar one in the form of a question. The question is this: how long shall death reign? And the answer was, as long as woman give birth, for I come to make an end of the works of woman. Birth and death are each the completion of the other. They form 2 points of a circle, a beginning and ending. He come to make an end of birth and its consequence death, because his work was to cause the ego or soul of the individual to so unfold that it mastered death, and by mastering death it would free itself from the will of life, and therefore from rebirth. He could only make an end to death by conquering the causes for rebirth. In other words, by teaching men the truth, they could remove themselves from the will of life, and he would thus enable them to overcome the necessity for rebirth. The next statement is this: I stood on a high hill and saw a tall and short man, and heard a voice as of thunder, and I drew near to hearken, and it spoke to me. I am thou, and thou art I, and where thou art, there I am also, and in all things I am sown, and from whencesoever thou gatherest me, in gathering me thou gatherest thyself. The tall and short man were, in the ancient Hebrew mysteries, considered as being dew, and man, the great man, was called in the Kabbalistic mysteries Adam Kadmon. He was the man of the greater or divine world, while the short man was the lesser Adam, the race of man, of human mankind. He saw upon the hill the tall man and the short man standing together side by side, and he heard a voice saying, I am thou, and thou art I. And he said this: where I am, thou art also. Where the lesser man of the material world exists, there also exists the divine world. There I am. I also am in all things, and where thou gatherest me, thou gatherest thyself. In more simple form, he gave this to the mass of people when he said, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, and ye are in me. In other words, all is one in the divine man. The high hill is considered to be the hill of the skull, because in the ancient mysteries, a skull-shaped hill represented the heaven world. The head of man, the giant man and the lesser man, had evolved to the point where he had reached the apex of the world, and therefore stood by the tall man. He had conjoined himself with the great and divine man. The next statement I picked because it has a peculiar significance. Oh, man, thou hearest with one ear, but the other is closed. This is a short statement, and yet it is very significant to every student of truth, because you hear with your outer or physical ear. The people that are spoken of in Matthew had outer eyes and outer ears, but the inner ear, which could not hear the voice of the divine, was closed, and therefore man depended upon his outer animalistic instincts and impulses rather than the guiding voice of the divine consciousness. They hear with one ear, the outer ear, but the inner ear, the one which hears the voice of the divine spirit, is closed. Again he said, the Lord said, if you do not make your low things high and your crooked things straight, ye shall not enter into my kingdom. There was no qualification to that statement. What did he mean by making your low things high? Simply this: man as a spiritual being is immersed in the flesh, buried in it as in a grave, and as a rule man is ruled by the impulses of his body and his emotions, rather than the impulses of the spirit. Therefore, man must make the body come under the rule of the Spirit. He must spiritualize all of the acts and natures of his lower material nature, and thus he can prepare himself for at one-ment with the divine Spirit. The next statement is this. It concerns the coming of the kingdom of heaven. When shall the kingdom come? When two shall become one, that which is without as well as that which is within, and the male with the female, neither male nor female. A great many of those writings and scrolls were put in the form of a question, and then he answered the question, and he answered this in this manner. When two shall become one, that which is without as well as that which neither male or female. He expressed it in the words of the Christian Bible in this form, in answering a question about marriage or giving in marriage. What did he mean? In the beginning, before the soul incarnated in the animal body, it was positive and negative in one. The male and female were a duad and a monad. We are taught in the ancient wisdom that God created men after his own image. Male and female created he them. Therefore, we know that God, the divine Spirit in manifestation, is both male and female in one, and the original state of man was both male and female. This was not referring to the physical body, but rather to the polarity of the soul. When man fell, that soul was divided into two parts, and throughout the path of life, the attraction between the two sexes has been caused by the pull of the positive and negative to again blend and become one. This is the source of the law of attraction between the two. We are told in the ancient wisdom that this was the beginning of the doctrine of twin souls. It divided to form the two polarities, positive and negative, and in the end that soul will again become one, not in the material plane, but in the spiritual plane when it comes to that point when the animalistic nature is conquered, when the two polarities of soul again become one and the Christ consciousness appears. When the duad becomes the monad, the two become one again as they were in the beginning. In that state, the male and female, because they are then the one consciousness blended into the Christ state. Jesus was male-female, the two in one, and this is the state that is attained by those who attain to the absolute at one-ment with God, because we know this, that in the material world, two polarities are necessary for manifestation. You cannot even find gold in the mountains without finding two kinds of rock present. Bull, quartz, and the mother lode. This is true in the animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdoms, and is also true in the spiritual kingdom. In the instance when they attain the Christ consciousness, they enter fully into the kingdom. The next statement, ask great things, and the small shall be added unto you. Ask heavenly things, and the earthly shall be added unto you. The mistake that so many of us make is that we ask great things and we get little. We do not ask for heavenly things and have all earthly things added to us. In the Bible, it is expressed in this manner. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you. That is, seek not the things which loom great in your material mind, but seek for heavenly things. Seek the spiritual, and all these things of earth shall come to you. Here is another statement that I think contains a beautiful thought. It is expressed in another way in the Christian Bible. That is this: for those that are weak, I am weak. For those that hunger, I suffer hunger. And for those that thirst, I suffer thirst. We find this statement completely given in his conjunction to the disciples when he said, Go ye forth and be all things to all men. He said, go out among men, be able to enter into any condition of life. Understand the things that they are seeking to express in their lives. Only thus can you help them. You cannot help man in a cave or mountain. You're not even going to help yourself. Wherever you come into contact with men, think as they think, feel as they feel, and yet hold your balance and attunement with divine spirit. Again, Jesus said, there are three principles in the universe: the deity, the Father or Spirit, The creative power, Elohim and the world soul. From Elohim and the world soul, 24 cosmic powers or angels come forth. 12, the nature of the mother soul. The lower 12 are the world trees of the Garden of Eden. The trees are divided into 4 groups of 3, the 4 rivers of Eden. I will try to explain that as clearly as possible. First, we find that there are 3 principles in the universe: the deity, the creative power, and world soul. What are these? First, deity is the source of all things, the divine and intangible essence. The Elohim is the world of the breath of the divine, that which is spoken of in Ecclesiastes as Hebelai, or divine from the Old Hebrew, is actually divine breath, and Elohim is the divine breath or word which comes forth from the all-pervading essence, the divine light, or as the Kabbalists call it, the Ein Sof Or. The world soul is the spirit of life which pervades all matter, including the animal body of man, the lesser animals, the vegetable kingdom, and mineral kingdom. It is the life force of the world soul, the creative spirit of the divine and the divine source of all things. From the creative breath, the divine breath and spirit or force of life, in our Christian churches, spirit and soul are considered as synonymous. The soul was the divine essence in man. The spirit was the force of life which is inherent in all things. That is expressed in Ecclesiastes in mistranslated version as, "Who knoweth the spirit of man which goeth upward, and the spirit of the beast that goeth downward to the earth?" Correctly translated, this is, "Who knoweth the spirit of man which ascends into the heavens, and who knoweth the spirit of the animal body which descendeth into the earth?" The spirit or animal body is part of the world soul. Come forth. The soul of man is a conscious part of that divine essence from the creative power, that is, the Word, which moved upon the face of the waters. The waters of Genesis were the world soul, the life force or energy. The divine breath moved on the face of the water, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and light was the first creation of the divine spirit of the spiritual plane. The supernal angels of the 24 spheres of the primal creation. Remember when you read in the book of Revelation about the 24 spirits before the throne? Those 24 are the first manifestations of creative power or expression. They come into creation before the world soul, and they form the powers of agencies through which the divine created man. Those 24 are symbolized by the 12 spiritual centers and 12 material centers in man's astral body. The 12 great spiritual centers, which are found in his head, and the 12 material centers through which that power is expressed. We are told that 12 follow the will of the Father Spirit, the Elohim. They are the channels through which the divine powers flow, and 12 follow the will of the Mother. Then they say this, that the lower 12 are the world trees of the Garden of Eden, and the trees are divided into 4 groups of 3, and they form the 4 rivers of Eden. In other words, Eden and the 4 rivers of Eden are within your own body. Did not Jesus say, "The kingdom of heaven is within"? And the 4 rivers and 12 manners of fruit of the tree of life. In the Old Hebrew it says, "And the tree of life bore 12 manners of fruit." In the Christian Bible it only speaks of the tree of life. Those 4 rivers are 3 divisions in 12 channels in the body of man, through which the divine spirit flows. They are the 12 houses of the zodiac, of the astrologer, even though astrologers as a rule have no concept of the occult laws behind their astrology, as there are not many who have delved deep enough into the mysteries. The next statement is, the Elohim is symbolized as a woman above and a serpent below. For the serpent came forth, animals, and from the woman man. Rather a peculiar statement, is it not? Remember that Elohim was the creative or divine spirit of God. the divine spirit manifested into the lower world in which negation or inharmony was found. The woman represents the lower or spiritual nature in man. The serpent represents the animal body and nature of man. For from the divine spirit was formed the soul of man, but from serpent the lower manifestation in the world soul was formed, the animal body of man, and thus man is dual in nature, and we are told that the woman bruises the head of the serpent. In other words, that the spiritual stands upon the material and the woman must crush the serpent, the animal or material, before the Elohim can return to the deity, the source from which it sprang. The next statement from these scrolls: when man was formed, Eden and Elohim depute their powers unto him. The world soul bestows on him the soul, and the world spirit infuses into him the spirit. In other words, man is a composite being. Man is composed of spirit from form or his animal body, and he is composed of soul, his spiritual nature, and he has in his nature Eden, the three combined in one. This is the man of the triangle, as shown by the Brahmins and as used in the Kabbalistic mysteries, the triad in man, spirit, soul, and that balanced equilibrium between spirit and soul in which lies Eden, into which he can enter if he will. The trouble is not enough of us will. The next statement: the real man is male-female, devoid of sex. Therefore he strives to abandon the animal nature, where there is neither male nor female, but a new creature. That is, the real man is neither male nor female. He strives to abandon the animal nature where he is divided or separated and return to the pure spirit, where he becomes two in one. I am not speaking of abnormal individuals who are sometimes called hermaphrodites. That is a psychological condition. This is an entirely different thing. It is the two parts of the soul blended, not become two in one, but one which has all the powers of dual creation. The next statement: for this is the gate of heaven, and this is the house of God, where the good God dwells alone, into which no impure man shall come, no psychic, no fleshly man, but it is kept under watch for the spiritual alone, where they must come, and casting away their garments, all become bridegrooms made virgin by the virginal spirit. For such an one is the virgin with child, who conceives and brings forth Eon, which is neither psychic, animal, nor fleshly, but a blessed Eon of eons. What does this mean? It means very simply this: that the goal of mankind is to return to God, in whom there is no division, only eternal oneness, and that into that condition no impure thing, no impure man can come. If you have in your consciousness, your mind, your nature, fear, hatred, anger, inharmony, you cannot approach God. Do you remember the statement in the Bible, only the pure in spirit shall know God? That is why so many of you have been unsuccessful in your attempts to find God, because you have approached him in a condition which God refuses to recognize as a part of his nature. God only recognizes and attunes with that which comes to him in perfect peace, quiet, calmness, harmony, and purity. There is no psychic, because the psychic deals with demons, elemental forces, and other things. You know, too many people seek phenomena rather than seek to purify themselves so that they can come closer and closer to the divine spirit. Know that your path to manifestation of true power is the changing and transmuting of your lower nature. Again, no fleshly man, that is, no one that is bound by bondage of the earthly body. We must be free from the flesh. That does not mean die, but be able to separate the intelligent consciousness from its bondage to the flesh, so that we can ascend into the spiritual planes. When we can leave behind all negative and impure thoughts, then we can enter the spiritual plane and come as a virgin bride, because all disorder has been washed away. It has been left behind, And we are made virginal by the virginal spirit because our spirit has then become two in one. This is really becoming an ascended master. When the two become one and there is only the one Spirit of God manifest in the vehicle, and when we can enter into that state, we bring forth a son, but that son is ourselves, the Son of God. It is neither fleshly, psychic, animal, but it is blessed eon of eons. It exists from the beginning to the end, because what has come forth from the bondage of life is the pure soul of man, which has been bound by the bounds of flesh. The next statement is one that deals with reincarnation, where he says this, that the soul must pass through every kind of existence and activity in its cycle or rebirth. In other words, it must meet every kind and condition of life and then free itself from it. We are told that a master is one who has mastered circumstances and things instead of being mastered by them. We are bound to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth until we overcome and master life and the lower nature of ourselves. The next statement, perfection is obtained by those souls who, led on by remembrance of their former conditions, soar above all limitation of the higher unity. In other words, this, that when we look back upon our life after certain development, we learn from the mistakes of the past what to avoid in the present, from the inharmony of the past, how to create harmony in the present, and when we do so, begin to soar above and beyond the limitations of the flesh and the environment and earthly conditions around us. We center our attention in the higher unity rather than diversity. The next statement is very deep. For what sort of emanation is there? What sort of matter must we supposition in order that God should form the universe, like as a spider weaves its web for itself? But he spoke and it was, and this is the meaning of the words of Moses, where he said, God said, let there be light, and there was light. Whence then was the light? From naught. For it is not written of the only from the voice of the speaker of the word. And he who spoke the word was not, and that which was not. For the seed of the universe, the word that was spoken, let there be light, was from the state beyond being. And this is the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world of man, both deriveth this principles from the seed and is enlightened by it. This primordial light and life is the source of all things. Man, living in a world of form and substance, is accustomed to measure God by his own idea of form and substance. That is what man's concept of God is. Man may conceive of God to be the lighting fire or the ocean, but is God something? No, God is not something. God is not, because God is without limitation, center, or circumference. God is the great nothingness, which contains all things, and he spoke the word, and the universe was created. But what was it created from? From nothing. It was created within and as a part of God, just as the spider spins a web from itself. And then the light of God moved and the universe was created. The light of God is the true nature of being beyond form, and that is the true light which lights every man in the world, and therefore man must withdraw from form before he can find the true nature of the formless God. The old teaching of the mysteries said this, that God is created and uncreated. The Kabbalists said he is ein, the positive and negative existence, that is, the positive existence in the material world existing formerly in the divine light before it was molded and shaped and formed. Another statement, the sons of God are the divine sparks, the real spiritual man within who have been left in the seed mixture to order and inform and correct and perfect the souls which remain in the downward state of existence. These are the spiritual avatars who have never been bound in the flesh accepting as they took on flesh of their own accord. They exist in the divine for the purpose of guiding and leading man back into that same state of oneness of consciousness. There is a statement that I want you all to remember. It is the name which Jesus is known by in all planes and spaces. Remember how Jesus said, "They cast out devils in my name"? The church says this was the name of Jesus, but this is not the name. This is the reasons that they have had dissensions and fights, because they have never known the secret name that Jesus taught his disciples, whereby they could call him from the furthest reaches of infinity. This name is his soul name, which remains a part of his being throughout all ages. I am really translating this literally. Amen, amen. I say unto you, my name through the ages is a baramintho. If thou wouldest know the first mystery, call upon me by the name my Father has given me. This knowledge, that these should have a name other than the name of the body, is known to every race in the world. Except our modern English race, even our American Indian had a secret name by which he called the child. So did the early Irish and the Hindus. The name of the soul has been the concealed name. And Jesus gave that name to those that he inducted into the mysteries so that they could call him when the need arose. The 5 great words of power that Jesus used when healing the sick and casting out devils were the following: Zema, Zema, Azah, Rahma, Azah. By these words I cast out demons. Later, he wrote a full length as to how he used these words to cast out devils. In further passages, he went on to explain that Zema was the create and uncreate power of the divine, and that Azah, Rahma, Azah were the words of power which vibrated the 3 great centers of energy in the head of man that the Hindus call Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas. Raja and Tamas are Cain and Abel, the centers of activity and inactivity in the Hindu mystery teachings. They are preserved in the Old Bible as Cain and Abel, and according to the further writings of Jesus, those words had power to restore the dead able to life. As that power expelled the imperfection of the body, the healing would take place, and if there was a negative or inharmonious spirit around it, it would be driven away as by a mighty wind. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.